quiet neighborhood, a family tragedy, and a chilling mystery. What happens when a man discovers that the children he's been raising for years aren't his own? What happens when a shocking truth emerges, one so devastating, it drives a man to commit the unthinkable? Stay with us, as we unravel the story of a preacher, a betrayal, and a tragic ending that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, family, and trust. This isn't just another story about infidelity, it's one that involves secrets so deep, so far-reaching, that they led to something far darker than anyone could have imagined. The preacher's life, built on faith and family, was turned upside down when he uncovered a truth about his children's true parentage. And in that moment, everything he believed in began to unravel. As we dig into this tragic case, you'll see how one shocking revelation set off a chain of events that would forever alter the lives of everyone involved. If you're fascinated by true crime and want more stories like this, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment below. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you won't miss a single twist in our next video. True Crime Tales brings you closer to the darkest mysteries, and we want you to be part of the journey. In the heart of New York, a preacher who was deeply embedded in his faith and his community made a discovery that would shatter his world in ways he couldn't have imagined. For years, he had been a man of guidance, of unwavering belief, and of strength. But all of that would come crashing down with one simple truth, one truth that would alter the very fabric of his life. It began with a DNA test. Perhaps it was curiosity, perhaps it was a routine check. Regardless of the reason, that single test sent shockwaves through the preacher's life. The results revealed a devastating and unimaginable reality: his 3 children, the ones he had raised as his own for their entire lives, were not biologically his. They were his father's. How could this happen? How could the man he looked up to, his own father, the person he trusted most, betray him in such a way? And more importantly, how could the woman he had chosen to spend his life with, his wife, allow this betrayal to take place? The shock was almost too much to bear. But it wasn't just the revelation of infidelity. It wasn't just the heartache of betrayal. This was a revelation that went deeper, affecting the preacher's sense of self, his understanding of his family, and his entire identity. It was a blow to his very core. A discovery so devastating that it left him questioning everything he thought he knew about the people closest to him. The preacher's emotions, already fragile from years of building a life with his wife and raising children he thought were his own, began to unravel. The weight of the truth was too much. And the consequences of this revelation would lead to a crime that no one could have foreseen. But what drove this man to the point of no return? What pushed him over the edge to commit an act so extreme, so tragic? This wasn't just a case of infidelity, it was a case of shattered identity, family betrayal, and the explosive fallout of buried secrets coming to light. Let's take a deeper look at the details of the case, step by painful step, and explore how a man once known for his faith found himself in the middle of an unimaginable tragedy. The man at the center of this case was someone many knew as a beacon of faith, a leader in his community, a preacher who had devoted his life to helping others. His words were meant to heal, to guide, to provide a sense of peace and stability to those around him. On the surface, he had it all. A family, a community, a role he cherished deeply. But beneath the surface, something was unraveling, something no one could see. A secret that, once uncovered, would shatter everything he believed in. For years, he had been carrying the weight of a life he thought was perfect. But what no one knew was the secret his wife had been hiding, an affair that had been taking place for years, a betrayal that cut deeper than anything he could have ever imagined. His wife, a woman he thought of as his partner, had not only been unfaithful to him, but the affair she had engaged in was with someone far closer to him than he could have ever expected, his own father. At the time, the marriage seemed picture perfect. They were a couple admired by the people around them, seemingly living a life filled with love, faith, and the shared joy of raising 3 beautiful children. But behind the scenes, the cracks in their marriage were widening. The guilt, the lies, and the hidden affair with his father, all these elements played a role in the slow unraveling of their relationship. Had she ever considered that her secret would be exposed? Or had she convinced herself that it was something that would remain buried forever? The moment of truth came when the preacher, perhaps as a part of a routine checkup or curiosity, decided to have a DNA test done for his children. Many people take these tests as a precaution, or out of a desire for medical information or a sense of curiosity. But for this preacher, the test results carried an emotional weight far heavier than he could have ever anticipated. The discovery was devastating. The 3 children he had raised, loved, and cared for as his own, his sons and daughter, were not biologically his. The DNA test confirmed the unthinkable. His own father was the biological father of his children. Imagine the shock. The betrayal. How does a man process the overwhelming reality that his entire life had been built on lies? How does he begin to come to terms with the fact that the people closest to him had deceived him on the most fundamental level, his own wife, the woman he had chosen to build his life with, and his own father, the man who had been his mentor, his role model, the person he trusted more than anyone in the world? What went through his mind when he learned the truth? Was there disbelief? Anger? A complete breakdown of his sense of self? And most importantly, what did he do with this newfound knowledge? Did he confront his wife immediately, demanding answers, or did he bury it inside, struggling to reconcile the enormity of the betrayal with the life he thought he knew? As the days passed, the preacher's thoughts grew darker. The weight of the secret gnawed at him, consuming his every thought. The betrayal of his wife was one thing, but his father's involvement, his father's intimate betrayal, cut so much deeper. How did he navigate through the storm of emotions raging inside him? Did he begin to see everything differently? The house that had once felt like a home now felt like a trap, a constant reminder of the betrayal and the loss of trust. This is where the story starts to take a darker turn. With every passing day, his emotional turmoil began to escalate. The preacher, once a man of calm and certainty, began to change. Anger, resentment, and confusion took over. What had started as a painful discovery now had the potential to change everything. The timeline leading up to the tragic event seemed to narrow, each moment, each thought, each action seemed to carry him closer to a decision that would alter his life and the lives of those around him forever. Did he try to forgive? Did he attempt to salvage what was left of his family? Or did the overwhelming weight of betrayal and broken trust push him further toward a breaking point? It's unclear how long he struggled with the truth, but what is clear is that the man who had been a symbol of faith and stability now found himself on the edge of a precipice, where the distance between his thoughts and his actions grew dangerously close. The stage was set for a confrontation, but what would that moment look like? Would it be a confrontation of words, of accusations and revelations? Or would it be something far more catastrophic? As the days wore on, the question was no longer about the truth of the DNA test. The question was, what would this man do with this truth now that it was in his hands? Would he ever be able to find peace again? Or would this discovery, this irreversible betrayal, lead him down a path he could never return from? The night of the murder was one of those nights that seemed like any other, but in reality, the atmosphere was charged with a tension that had been building for days, weeks even. The discovery of the truth, the unthinkable betrayal, had shattered the preacher's mind. He had carried that weight alone for so long, and the pressure was beginning to crack his calm exterior. But that night, something in him broke. What happened in those final moments, just before the tragedy? What triggered that violent, fatal outburst? The details of what transpired in that house remain unclear, but what is known is that the confrontation between the preacher and his wife became violent. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long finally erupted. Was it the pain of betrayal? The anger over the affair with his father? Or was it something deeper, the overwhelming realization that everything he had built, everything he thought was true, was nothing more than a lie? The moments leading up to the murder are shrouded in mystery. Some say there were words exchanged, harsh, cutting words that exposed the raw emotions both had been trying to keep hidden. Others suggest that it wasn't just words, but the years of emotional torment, the grief of being deceived, the crushing sense of violation that overwhelmed him. What exactly was said in that moment of confrontation? We may never fully know, but what happened next would seal their fates forever. In the heat of that moment, something inside the preacher snapped. What began as an argument spiraled into violence. The brutality of the act shocked everyone who knew him. Was it a crime of passion, or was there a darker, more calculated decision behind it all? Was it the culmination of years of suppressed anger and betrayal? Or was it an impulse driven by the overwhelming shock of the discovery? After the crime, the preacher's actions were chilling. What would someone do when they had crossed the line, when they had taken the life of someone they had loved for so long? Did he immediately confess, tormented by his own guilt, or did he attempt to cover up what he had done, hoping he could somehow escape the consequences? The police, once they arrived at the scene, began piecing together the evidence. But the more they uncovered, the more questions arose. Was there an attempt to hide the truth, to make it look like something it wasn't? Did he try to flee the scene, or was he there waiting, frozen by the gravity of what had just transpired? His actions after the crime would speak volumes. In many cases, a killer's behavior immediately following the murder can provide vital clues about their state of mind. As investigators worked to unravel the sequence of events, shocking details about the preacher's mental state began to emerge. Could it have been the weight of the discovery, the revelation that his children were not his, that had driven him to the brink? Could the deep-seated anger, the sense of betrayal, have clouded his judgment to the point of no return? Was this a crime born of emotional turmoil, a desperate and tragic outburst of pain, or was there something more to it? Could the murder have been premeditated, an act planned in the darkness of his mind long before the confrontation? The investigators would soon find themselves looking at the case from multiple angles. Was this a breakdown of a man who had lost everything, his trust, his family, his sense of self? Or was there a darker, more calculated element at play here? Was he consumed by the idea of revenge? Could the weight of the deception have pushed him to the brink of insanity, leaving him unable to differentiate between right and wrong? The more they looked into his actions and his state of mind, the more the lines between passion and premeditation blurred. What they uncovered was a complex portrait of a man on the edge, a man who had lost control of his emotions and his life. They would uncover details of his behavior that left even the most seasoned investigators unsettled. How could a man who had once been a symbol of faith and morality commit such an unimaginable act? What did this tragedy reveal about the true cost of secrets, betrayal, and the breaking point of the human psyche? As the investigation continued, the world began to understand the true depths of the preacher's torment. And what they uncovered would leave everyone questioning not only his actions but the very nature of his mental state at the time of the murder. Could the discovery of his children's true parentage have been the final blow that pushed him over the edge? Or had something darker been simmering inside him for far longer than anyone could have guessed? The answers, it seemed, lay buried deep within the preacher's mind, and perhaps, buried even deeper within the twisted web of lies that had surrounded his life for so long. At this point in the story, you may be wondering, what would you do if you discovered that your children weren't your own? That the person you had trusted most, your own father, was the biological father of your kids? How would you feel if, not only had your partner betrayed you, but your entire life had been built on a lie? Could you ever look them in the eyes again? Could you forgive them, or would the weight of such a betrayal be too much to bear? Imagine being in the preacher's shoes, faced with the truth that turned his world upside down. What would your next move be? Would you confront your partner, demand the truth, and risk shattering the family you've worked so hard to build? Or would you retreat into yourself, carrying the pain in silence, struggling with your feelings of betrayal? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Could you ever find forgiveness in a situation like this, or would it be impossible to move past such a breach of trust? And as the story unfolds, let's take a step back and ask you, was the preacher's crime a sudden outburst of raw emotion, a crime of passion in the heat of anger, or was it something far more calculated? Do you believe that he had been planning this for some time, slowly building toward a breaking point, or was it an impulsive act that stemmed from overwhelming shock and betrayal? Vote now in the poll on your screen. Do you think the preacher snapped in a moment of rage, or did he, deep down, make a deliberate choice to take control of the situation in the most horrific way possible? But it doesn't stop there. Can there ever be any justification for such a crime? Was the preacher justified in any way, considering the pain and betrayal he must have felt? Or was this an unforgivable act, no matter the circumstances? A crime that went beyond the limits of human emotion and morality. What do you believe? Was the preacher's anger, no matter how deep, enough to excuse the tragic end that followed? Or was this an unforgivable betrayal of trust that left no room for understanding? Your thoughts matter. This is a story that has left so many questions in its wake. As we move further into the details, consider where you stand. Could any situation, any emotional toll, ever justify such an act? Share your opinions with us, and don't forget to participate in the poll as we continue to explore this harrowing tale of betrayal, loss, and the breakdown of a once strong man. The web of deception had been unraveled. The motives were clear: betrayal, anger, a world shattered in the blink of an eye. The preacher's discovery had set off a chain of events that led to a tragic, irreversible moment. But now, the question remained: how would the law uncover the truth behind this crime? How would the police piece together the fragments of this shattered life to bring the preacher to justice? Now that we know the why, let's shift focus to how the investigation unfolded. What steps did the authorities take to trace the path from the crime scene to the arrest? In every case, it's the details, the small pieces of evidence that, when put together, tell a much larger story. How did the police begin to investigate this shocking crime? What were the first clues that led them to believe the preacher was the one responsible for this horrific act? Was it his behavior that gave him away, or were there physical signs that could point directly to him? But as we walk through the investigation, it's important to remember one thing: the discovery of the preacher's guilt wasn't the end of the story. No, this case had more to reveal. More twists. More secrets waiting to be uncovered. The investigation didn't stop at just finding the killer. No, there was more lurking in the shadows, more layers waiting to be peeled back. What other shocking truths would emerge in the aftermath? What could possibly be uncovered that hadn't already left everyone stunned? Would the preacher's actions lead to an even darker revelation about the true nature of the betrayal he experienced? Stay tuned to find out. The shocking twist that came after the arrest would leave everyone questioning just how deep this story really went. And as we move forward, we'll uncover the chilling details of what happened after the preacher was apprehended. What did he confess? What truths did he reveal in the face of his own arrest? Keep watching as this case unravels further, and the dark, hidden corners of the story come to light. Behind the murder, there was a wife, a mother, a woman who, despite her actions, was not just the villain in this story. It's easy to focus only on the preacher and the horrific act he committed, but the reality is far more complex. His wife, though responsible for the betrayal that shattered her husband's world, was also a victim of her own choices. She, too, had lived with the consequences of deceit. She, too, had been trapped in a web of lies, where the truth was far darker than anyone could have imagined. In this case, it's not just about the preacher's pain. It's about the devastating ripple effect that unfolded in the lives of everyone involved. The children, the family members, no one walked away unscathed. And, in the end, it's important to remember that while the preacher's actions are inexcusable, the tragedy didn't begin or end with the murder. It had roots far deeper, tangled in a web of betrayal, secrets, and hidden emotional tolls. Now, let's pause for a moment and consider the preacher himself. What kind of mental strain must he have endured? How did a man of faith, a man who had spent his life serving others, come to the point where he could take the life of the woman he loved? Was this simply an emotional breakdown in the heat of the moment, or did years of resentment and festering anger lead him to this final act? Could he have reached a breaking point where the pain of being deceived by both his wife and his father was too much to bear? We often hear of people being pushed to their limits, but what happens when someone's very foundation, their sense of self, is shattered by the ones they trusted most? It's easy to blame the preacher, to cast him as the sole perpetrator. But as we reflect on the emotional toll he must have experienced, it's hard to ignore the years of psychological strain that led to that night. Was there a moment where the weight of his discoveries began to eat away at him, eroding his judgment and pushing him past the point of no return? Was this the final, explosive result of a man who had been broken by the lies that had surrounded him for so long? And then, there are the children, the true victims in this tragedy. Their lives, like their fathers, were built on lies. The revelation that their biological father wasn't the man they had called Dad for so many years, what kind of emotional toll would that knowledge take on them? For years, they had been raised under the assumption that the preacher was their father, that the family they shared was real. Now, they would have to live with the knowledge that their entire upbringing had been a lie. The pain, confusion, and identity crisis they would face could last a lifetime. This tragedy doesn't just end with the death of a mother, it continues with the fallout in the lives of these children, whose emotional scars will forever be a reminder of the darkness that tore apart their family. While we may focus on the crime itself, we must never forget the long-term impact it has on the innocent bystanders, the children, who are forced to grapple with the reality of their parentage and the consequences of their parents' actions. They are left to pick up the pieces of a broken family, left to question what is real and what was just an illusion built on lies. The murder, horrific as it was, is just the surface of a much deeper tragedy, a tragedy that will continue to haunt all those involved for years to come. And as we piece together the full picture, we must acknowledge that the psychological and emotional toll of this case extends far beyond the initial act of violence. The aftermath of betrayal, broken trust, and shattered identities is just as devastating as the crime itself. And, perhaps, even more painful than the murder itself is the uncertainty of the future for those left behind, who now have to live with the scars of the choices made. The case of the New York preacher is one that leaves us with far more questions than answers. What would drive a man, once trusted by his community and revered for his faith, to murder the woman he once loved? Was it the devastation of betrayal, the heart-wrenching shock of his discovery, or was it something far deeper, something hidden in the dark corners of his mind that we still don't fully understand? The layers of this case are complex, and as we unravel the details, it becomes clear that there's far more beneath the surface than a simple act of violence. In the end, we're left to wonder, how could a seemingly strong, upstanding man lose control in such a way? What pushed him past the point of reason? Was it the weight of a life built on lies? Was it the unthinkable nature of the truth he uncovered? Or, perhaps, was it the years of emotional and psychological strain that finally drove him to make the ultimate, irreversible decision? But this case doesn't end here. In our next video, we'll explore the legal aftermath of this tragic event. How did the community react when they learned the truth? How did the preacher's crime shatter the trust of those who had once looked up to him? And what happened in the courtroom? We'll examine the trial, the verdict, and the consequences of his actions, as well as how justice was ultimately served, or whether it truly was. We'll also take a deeper look into other cases where betrayal and infidelity led to shocking and tragic outcomes. These are stories of love, loss, and the catastrophic results of hidden secrets. If you've been as captivated by this case as we have, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We want to hear your thoughts. Do you think the preacher's actions were justified in any way? Was his crime the result of overwhelming emotions, or was it the result of something far darker? Or was this the tragic tale of a man who let his own rage dictate his fate? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, we'll be back with more details and analysis, so don't forget to hit that notification bell, and stay with us as we continue to uncover the truth behind this shocking story. As we close this chapter, remember, sometimes, the most devastating secrets come from the people we trust the most. The ones we love, the ones we share our lives with. But what happens when those secrets are exposed? What happens when betrayal comes not from a stranger, but from the very heart of your family? The preacher's world was shattered, and so was the world of everyone who thought they knew him. But what if this story is just the beginning? What if, behind every perfect life, there's a hidden truth waiting to be uncovered? We've seen the depths of this tragedy, but many questions still remain unanswered. What does it mean to be betrayed by your own flesh and blood? How far can a person be pushed before their darkest instincts are revealed? Stay with us as we continue to explore stories of secrets, lies, and the explosive consequences they bring. We'll be back with more investigations that uncover the hidden truths people are willing to hide, sometimes, at the cost of everything. Stay tuned.